everyone, I am Miss Sarah B. Carino, and in today's video, I will be talking about the process in conducting psychological assessment. So, what exactly is psychological assessment? Psychological assessment is a process of testing that uses a combination of techniques to help arrive at a client's diagnosis and guide treatment. The testing process can be efficiently attributed to steps taken in the conduct of scientific research in psychology. In conducting psychological assessment, the testing process begins with a testable referral question, and it is completed when the results are conveyed, usually in oral formats or through written report. So, for the first step of the process, we need referral. The initial referral initiates the testing process, and a psychological test referral form is required. Referral sources can be categorized as either external, such as from a pediatrician, from school, or from a family member. Or it could be internal, where the referral comes directly from your clinic. A referral source can also be a mental health clinician or a colleague who does not provide psychological testing services. In this process, there will be necessary information in the referral for testing. This includes diagnostic and related referral questions that are clearly specified and appropriate. There must also be a justifiable reason as to why testing is required. So after the referral for testing, the next step for the process is the initial psychological assessment report. The primary aim of this step is to complete an initial psychological assessment report through a clinical interview, including the examination of mental state and behavioral observations. The tests are either compiled by psychological construct or test format. It is selected by whatever defines them most easily. Furthermore, patients and related family members should be given detailed written test instructions so that they stay fully informed throughout the remaining steps in the process. Lastly, there are two purposes of clinical assessment. First, it aims to determine the impairment of function, and second, it aims to generate hypotheses. There are certain impairments that may be too obvious in determining the impairment in function. But take note that assessments are not entirely about weakness and impairment. Rather, it is also a clear survey of what's going right. In the third step of the process, the selection of the appropriate test takes place. The assessor selects a testing battery based on the hypothesis developed in the initial psychological assessment. It should be chosen based on the established set of criteria, which should include their own internal psychometric properties, like what exactly they assess and how would they assess it. Great care should be taken to include multiple measures of the same constructs. This can be combined later with the clinical interview data and behavioral observations to make assertions about whether there is evidence for or against hypotheses. In this process, test users must have the ability to choose and use only the tests that are most suitable for the person being tested with regards to the test administered. The test should be stored in a way that fairly guarantees that its specific contents will not be made known to the test taker in advance until the test is administered. Another responsibility of the test user prior to the administration of the test is to ensure that the test is properly performed by a prepared and suitably trained individual. Test administration and scoring of the selected test are the next steps after selecting a test battery. There are perhaps two of the most significant measures in the entire process. In making sure that all assessments are administered and scored in their appropriate standardized manner, the strictest discipline should be used. The rapport between the examiner and the examinee can be critically important during the test administration, and particularly in one-on-one or small group testing. But take note that it is important that attempts to establish rapport with the test taker do not violate any rules of the instructions for the test administration. The test administrator must also be familiar with the test materials and procedures and must have all the materials available to perform the test properly at the test site. A stopwatch, a supply of pencils, and a sufficient number of test protocols might be included as required materials. It is the responsibility of test users to ensure that the room in which the test will be carried out is comfortable and suitable to the testing. Distracting situations such as unnecessary noise, heat, cold, interruptions, blinding sunshine, crowding, insufficient ventilation, and so on, should be avoided if possible. So now, let us proceed to our fifth step. This step is where test results and behavioral observations are combined with clinical assessments data to address each of the hypotheses. This process is called the integration of all data. Every hypothesis generated should be addressed by the testing process. In addition to integrating all of the data collected into themes, the process of fitting the themes together into a coherent narrative is presented. The end result is that the individuals being assessed and the referral sources will be more likely to take recommendations made at the end of the report. After integrating all the data, we can now continue with writing the assessment report. Minor changes to the initial report are made in this process, including a new title of the final report, along with the insertion of a template listing the assessment procedures and tests comprising the battery with parenthetical completion dates affixed. After that, it is appropriate to include the following components, such as an initial column listing the most essential indices, scales, subscales, and test variables. Ideally, test scoring, analysis, and report writing should all occur immediately after the final session of test administration. So the case data would be new in the memory of the examining psychologist and therefore readily available. As a result, less time would be required for the analysis of relevant information. Finally, it is important to find a balance between using professional language while not using too much psychological jargon in writing of the assessment report. And for the last step in conducting psychological assessment, it is necessary to provide a feedback. Scheduling a test feedback appointment with the patient and pertinent family members is advisable, although not mandatory. This helps the results to be fully interpreted in a therapeutic context, which is facilitated by an immediate reference to the final written report. A copy of the final report should be released to the referral sources once it is completed to the expedite treatment intervention. Any release form used for this purpose should be HIPAA compliant. When contact has been accomplished and noted on the case progress form, the research case can be considered complete. In addition, there is no consistent model that has been developed and widely implemented throughout the field to provide feedback. Feedback should be, in general, given at a level that is both professional and understandable. This means that based on the assessment itself and the person being assessed, feedback sessions should be both precisely structured and easily understood. So, to sum up everything, we have 7 steps in conducting psychological assessment, and these are: first, referral; which initiates the testing process. Second is the initial psychological assessment report, which the clinical interview takes place. And then after that is the selection of appropriate tests, in which the selection was based on the data from the initial clinical interview. Fourth step is the test administration and scoring, which should be in a standardized way. And after that is the integration of all data. It is where the test results and behavioral observations are combined with clinical assessment data to address each of the hypotheses. And for the sixth step is writing the assessment report, in which it is important to find a balance between using professional language while not using too much psychological jargon in writing. And the last step is to provide a feedback. Let us not forget that the importance of psychological assessment lies in the fundamental assumption that there are aspects of our functioning that we are not entirely aware of or cannot effectively articulate. That is why psychological assessment is only helpful when it is valid and reliable. So, let us always remember that at its most basic, psychological assessment provides a catalog on the individual's cognitive, emotional, and psychological strengths, weaknesses, deficits, and resources. And at its best, it provides dynamic insights into the inner workings of an individual, yielding invaluable information for diagnosis, potential intervention, and prognosis. So, that's it for today. I hope you have now a clear view of the process in conducting the psychological assessment. So God bless everyone and have a good day.
Drop it.